Rated walls are typically not a huge component of residential houses. There are components within a residence that do require some sort of rating. If a garage is attached, maybe underneath stairs, there's some specific components that you should probably have a decent idea or knowledge about just in case you get into it. But for the most part, this isn't like a huge commercial project where you have all kinds of rated walls, firewalls, kind of interchangeable terminology there, like a rated wall, a rated assembly, a firewall, all kind of generally the same component, right? It's some type of structure assembly of a wall that will protect against fire. There's all types of different materials nowadays. Most people use drywall, but I feel like I should dive into it just so you have a clear understanding of what may be required of you. So we'll kind of dive into all the different components. We have understairs, we have garage separation, we have fire blocking, we have structures within 5 foot of the property line, and then also we have duplexes. So first, let's dive into the code a little bit on garage separation, just so you have kind of an idea on garages. So dwelling garage fire separation. The garage shall be separated as required by table 3026, which I will show you. Openings in the garage wall shall comply with 3025. Attachment of gypsum board shall comply with another table. So they're just telling you to go to a bunch of different tables to find out the information. At the end of the day, you have to provide a clear separation between the garage and living space, which would include living space above the garage. This note right here. So here's table R3026, dwelling garage separation. So from the residence and attics, so not less than 1/2 inch gypsum board or equivalent applied to the garage side. From habitable rooms above the garage. So this is like we're talking about if there's living space above your garage, you have to make sure you install 5/8 inch drywall on the ceiling. Let's see here. It says structures supporting floor ceiling assemblies used for separation required by this section. So not less than 1/2 inch drywall. And then garage is located less than 3 feet from the dwelling unit. So it could even be a detached garage, but if it's really close to it, they still want separation. So it says not less than 1/2 inch gypsum board equivalent applied to the interior side of exterior walls that are within this area. So it'd be both interior walls. We hop back up here though and we go from the residence and attic. So not less than 1/2 inch gypsum board equivalent applied to the garage side. Well, so if you just have an attic up there, well, you're just putting your 1/2 inch drywall up, right? Well, where you have like an actual wall, maybe you walk through a door and you go into your house, well, you're obviously going to drywall the inside of the house as part of your finish. They're also going to require that 1/2 inch drywall in or on the garage side as well. So that would be the component as far as garage separation. Now that door itself is also required to have a little bit of protection as well. So openings and penetrations through the walls or ceilings separating the dwelling from the garage shall be in accordance with section 30251 and 30253, or through 30253. So openings from a private garage directly into a room used for sleeping purpose shall not be permitted. So just kind of saying you can't have your garage open up into a bedroom. It would just be an unsafe condition with cars and running and gas and all kinds of stuff like that. Other openings between the garage and residence shall be equipped with solid wood doors not less than 1 3/8 inches thickness, solid or honeycomb core steel doors not less than 1 3/8 thick, or a 20-minute fire rated door with self-closing or automatic closing device. That's a big thing. So if you think about garage separation, a lot of times, at least on like new houses, when I do inspections on new houses, when I was building new houses, one of the big components inspectors look for is self-closing hinges. You want to make sure you have that solid core door or that 20-minute door that separates the garage from the house. It's just part of that, what they would call the assembly, right? That whole part of that wall that separates garage from house. It's protecting the house in case of a fire in the garage, because a lot of people store paints and gas and flammable stuff, or their cars are running and all kinds of stuff. They want that clear separation. So they want, when you open your door, they want it to self-close. They don't want any of those fumes or any of the gases or anything to get into the house. And so they want that thing to shut all the way. So you can get self-closing hinges. And of those self-closing hinges, you can set them so that they will set all the way. You can put a closer on it. I normally don't see that in a residential application per se, but I see the self-closing hinges a lot. Quick note though, when you wind those self-closing hinges, you can wind them too much and pop the hinge. I've done it a few times. So if you do put those in, if you've got some type of home project where you're putting in your garage and you've got the door, you're putting the hinges in, don't overturn those springs that are in those self-closing hinges. They can pop and then they're no good and you got to go get another one. I've done it a few times. So that would kind of cover garage separation. You know, it's just 1/2 inch drywall on each side, 5/8 on the ceiling if there's living space above. Make sure you got a rated door or a solid core door, self-closing hinges. Any penetrations that go through that wall, you know, fire caulk them, protect them, fire tape them. Make sure that you're protecting that separation. So next would be maybe like under-stair protection, right? So under-stair protection is just essentially protecting those stairs in case of a fire, if that's one of the main means of egress out of the house. So maybe it goes up to a bonus room, it goes up to a second floor, it goes down to a basement. Well, we want to make sure that in case of a fire, someone can get out. At least giving them, even if it's a couple minutes extra time, to protect those stairs from starting on fire. And so as part of that, they want to make sure that the underside of those are protected. Either they're concealed or maybe there's storage underneath there, but if there's storage, that the underside of the stair stringers are protected. So let's look at that code quickly here. Under stair protection. So we have enclosed space under stairs that is accessed by a door or access panel shall have walls under stair surface and any soffits protected on the enclosed side with 1/2 inch gypsum board. So essentially what they're saying is that you need to protect the underside of those stair stringers. If it's an accessible space. Sometimes houses don't have that space accessible and it's just framed in and drywalled off. Well, that meets that requirement. You don't have to cut a hole and go drywall the underside of the stairs. But if it is open, maybe it's a storage area, kids like to play under there or something, just go in and drywall the underside of those stairs. It doesn't have to look pretty, it doesn't have to look perfect, but go drywall them, you know, put some 5/8 or 1/2 inch drywall on there and fire tape it in and seal it up, and then it's just a little bit safer than it was before. So keep that in mind if you got any type of basement projects where you're messing with stairs, or maybe you have a bonus room where you're maybe readjusting those stairs that head up there. Just make sure you protect the underside of that. So then next on our list would be like fire blocking. And it's like, well, what is fire blocking? Well, fire blocking is protecting the movement of fire from horizontal to vertical spaces. And that is typically only in a residence. That's at like soffit locations. So say you're finishing your basement and you've got some ductwork that you put in, or some existing ductwork and you're going to frame it out. Well, anywhere that particular soffit hits a wall. So you have like framed wall, like a stud wall, and then you've got the soffit that you've put in. Well, where the transition between the stud wall and the soffit hits, they're going to want to protect that stud bay. They're wanting to make sure that any fire that may start down in that stud bay can't come up and travel really fast through your soffit and get up into your ducts and flow through the house fast, right? They want to slow it down. It's not as hard as it sounds or as difficult as it may seem. So fire blocking In combustible construction, which would be most houses built out of wood, fire blocking shall be provided to cut off both vertical and horizontal concealed draft openings and to form an effective fire barrier between stories and between top story and the roof space. As an inspector, most of the time I deal with just like two situations. I deal with this one right here. It says in concealed spaces of stud walls and partitions, including furred spaces and parallel rows of studs or staggered studs as follows, horizontally at intervals not exceeding 10 feet. So all that sounds confusing, but pretty much what it says is if you have a stud wall, you built a wall that's over 10 feet high. So say it's a 12-foot high garage wall. Well, they want you to block that at 10 feet. They want to make sure that there's not a situation where a fire could travel more than 10 feet before hitting some type of block, some type of blockade. Smoke can't, it's a protectant. And you can use different types of materials, and I'll show you those here in a second. The other one is this one right here. It interconnections between concealed vertical and horizontal spaces such as occur at soffits, drop ceilings, and cove ceilings. So that's kind of what I was talking about as far as maybe you framed a soffit over your kitchen and you got cabinets that are going up to it. Well, those soffits where they hit walls, where the studs hit that soffit, you want to protect it. You want to make sure that there's clear separation. And you could do that with, you could drywall the stud walls and then build your soffit, and you got clear separation. You could put up a piece of OSB. You can also use like 2x material. You can even use insulation. So if you're using insulation, well, maybe you're already insulating your exterior walls, so it's no big deal. It really just dives into like interior walls at that particular point, right? So let's look at fire blocking materials except as provided in section 30211. So fire blocking shall consist of the following materials. So here's 2-inch nominal lumber. So when you get into those walls that are over 10 feet, well, you could just go in there and put a block in there, right? Maybe at 9 feet, just go put a horizontal block in there. If you've got a nail gun, you just put in blocks. You can stagger them. You know, maybe you do one at 8 feet and one at 9 so you can have room to nail them all. And that's your blocking. That's all you needed. If you're insulating that, so you can use 2 thicknesses of 1-inch nominal lumber, lumber with broken lap joints. It's kind of the same thing. They're just saying you could take multiple pieces of lumber and separate it that way. Here's your 1/2-inch gypsum board, 1/4-inch cement-based millboard, which would be like a cementitious material. But then here's the big one, and this is what most people use, is just insulation. Bats or blankets of mineral wool or glass fiber or other approved materials installed in such a manner as to be securely retained in place. Well, that's awesome, right? I mean, if you've got a little bit of extra insulation laying around, maybe you didn't insulate your interior walls, and so you just take your little extra pieces and you just pop them in the stud bays up high. That will separate the soffit from the wall, and you've met that requirement. You're good to go. If your garage wall that is 12 feet high and you're insulating it, maybe you're going to have a heated garage, you've already met that requirement. You're good to go. Let's see here. It says bats and blankets of mineral or glass fiber or other approved non-rigid materials shall be permitted for compliance with the 10-foot horizontal fire blocking, like I just mentioned. And then here we have unfaced fiberglass. Unfaced fiberglass used as fire blocking shall fill the entire cross section of a wall cavity to a height of not less than 16 inches measured vertically, where piping, conduit, or other obstructions encountered insulation packed tightly around the loose obstruction. So you want to make sure that when you fire block that separation between your soffit and your stud wall, that you carry that insulation down a little ways. I would carry it down, 16 inches below the soffit. So if you have a 1-foot soffit and then you need to go another 16 inches, well, that's 28 inches. So you just have a chunk of 28-inch fiberglass insulation and you just shove it in the stud base. Also, if your ductwork goes through a wall, but maybe that wall's not open to the stud bays, maybe you put a top plate and two, your studs carry up on each side. Well, there's nothing really to fire block. It can't get to the stud bay as it is. So that in that particular situation, you would be good to go. So then we talked about understairs. We talked about fire blocking that you might have in your house. We talked about garage separation. And now let's talk a little bit about 5-foot setbacks. So in general, if you are closer than 5 feet from your property line, and in most residential situations, that's going to be if you're building like a shop or a carport or a garage or an addition or something that is now you're encroaching on the property line. As soon as you get within 5 feet, it's going to trigger the requirement for a rated wall, a rated assembly, a 1-hour rated assembly. So let's look at what that requirement is real fast. So we have exterior walls. So we have the exterior wall element, fire resistant rating, and then the minimum fire separation distance. So for walls that are greater than or equal to 5 feet off of the property line, you have 0 requirements for a rating. But then you hop into here where minimum distance separation where you're 0 feet, 1 hour tested in accordance to ASTM International Building Code with exposure on both sides. Okay. So that would just tell you that if you are greater than or equal to 5 feet, you don't have a problem. If you are less than 5 feet off your property line, you need to have a minimum of a 1-hour rating. Okay. Projections. So here they start talking about different types of projections, what can project. So 1 hour on the underside or heavy timber or fire retardant treated wood. So if you're less than or equal to or greater than or equal to 2 feet to less than 5 feet, so somewhere between 2 and 5 feet, you would have to have any soffits that you have rated. They'd have to be protected. A 1 hour on the underside or heavy timber or fire retardant treated wood. So they're just saying that any projections, which would be a soffit or some type of eave projection, would have to be rated. Okay. Openings in the walls. So they're saying if you're less than 3 feet, you can't have any openings. So that means no windows. So if you're within 3 feet of the property line, no windows. It just has to be a wall at that particular point. It has to be a 1 hour rated wall because you're less than 5 feet up here. Now, if you are 3 feet or more, so 3 to 5 feet, well, 25% of the maximum wall area can be windows or openings for that matter. So you might be able to figure out if you're building a wall that's, say right at 3 feet, and you are good to go. You can put in a few windows and you should be all set. But when you get into garages, there is a specific instance when you get within, I believe it's 3 feet of the property line, your eave can only be 4 inches, right? You can't have a projection any greater than 4 inches. But it has to be a garage type accessory structure, not a house, not a dwelling unit, if that makes sense.